This is going to introduce you to our new mastery grid that goes with verbals. So this time it's going to look a little bit like a game board. And the directions tell you to use this grid. You're going to put it in present mode where you go up to slideshow. And you'll click on activity 1. And it'll take you to slide 1. And the directions are here. Get the copy of student notes. And in this case, the student notes look like this. It says number 1, nouns and their jobs, and you're going to take notes on here in a few seconds now. The screencast will be linked here for you. You'll take notes on the jobs of nouns, glue this into your notebook, and then complete the exit ticket. In order to move on to the next task, you need to get at least a 75%. When you're ready, you can click X, and then it'll take you back to the main game board, and then you'll click number 2, and you'll work on the second task. I'll have my tracking chart linked here on every page, and I'll also post it in Google Classroom, so that'll be easy for you to find. Okay, so we're going to start with our first task. Again, you're going to get this, jobs of nouns. In order to understand verbals, there are some things that you need to understand first about parts of speech. So as I go through the notes, you're going to copy them down. Number 1, we've got to know what is a noun. So as always, you pause the screencast as needed to make sure that you're taking the notes and have enough time. But a noun is a word that names a person, place, thing, or idea. A good way to check a noun is you can put a, an, or the in front of most nouns, not proper nouns, but most nouns. So for example, cat. I could say a cat or the cat. If I wasn't sure if wisdom was a noun, I could say the wisdom, and I know that then it's a noun. And we have different types of nouns, and you've probably heard of these before, more in elementary school, the difference between common and proper. Common is an every old day noun that doesn't get capitalized, and a proper noun does, like your name. Then there are singular versus plural nouns. So singular names one, plural names more than one. There are possessive nouns. We've talked about possessive nouns when you put an apostrophe S onto your name. It was a noun, but it turns into its job, changes a little bit, and it becomes an adjective. But it's still a type of a noun. Then we have these things called collective nouns. Collective nouns name an entire group of something. For example, team. A team is a collective noun. One team sounds like it's singular, but it actually has a lot of different people on a team. When I think of a baseball team, I'm not thinking of one person, so it's considered collective. And then we have concrete and abstract. Concrete nouns are nouns that you can see, and abstract nouns are ones that you can't see. Now, I'm really not going to spend much time talking about these as we go through verbals. It's just some terminology that I think you should know over the years that has to do with nouns. So what we're going to spend most of our time talking about are what the jobs of nouns do in sentences. So you're going to see that I have on your notes what jobs can nouns do, and a little mnemonic there called iPods A. In the first column, you're going to list the job. So I stands for indirect object. P stands for predicate noun. O for object of the preposition. D for direct object. S is for subject. So any noun could do any of these jobs in a sentence. And then the A stands for a positive, and we've already talked about positives. They follow another noun, and they're inside of commas to kind of set them off. So these are the jobs that a noun can do in a sentence. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about them. And I've introduced them in the order that I think it's easiest to look for them. If I found a noun in a sentence and I wanted to figure out its job, the first job I'd rule out is object of a preposition, because we've spent a lot of time talking about these. These are the last words of a prepositional phrase. You have a preposition plus a modifier plus a noun. Well, the noun at the end, instead of just saying it's a noun now, we're going to talk about the job that that noun is doing. The job it's doing is the object of a preposition. So in the sentence I gave my homework to my teacher is a prepositional phrase. To is the preposition, teacher is the noun at the end, and it's doing the job of object of a preposition. We always look for these first. The next job I would look for is the subject. The subject tells who or what the sentence is about. The teacher gave us homework. The noun teacher is doing the job of the subject. It tells who the sentence is about. So I like to look for these second. Now we're going to get into some things called complements, and these are a little bit more complicated, and we're going to spend the next couple lessons talking about them. But I want you to get an overview of it here. So the next one is a direct object. We're going to talk about sentence patterns that go with verbs, with sentences. So we've got a subject. We look for our verb. Now instead of just saying it's a verb, we've got to classify it. It's either an action verb or a linking verb. An action verb shows what something is doing. It's an action that you can see, or it's a mental action. When we find an action verb, the noun that follows it can be a direct object. It answers the question, whom or what. So in the sentence here it says, I handed. Handed is the action verb. I could see someone doing that. I would ask the question, whom or what. I handed whom or what. I handed my homework. Now, it might sound like you could say, I handed my teacher, and I want you to picture that. Are you picking your teacher up and handing her over? No, that doesn't make sense. So you handed what? You handed the homework. So homework in the sentence is doing the job of direct object. We look for these if we see an action verb. Now, if we see an action verb, you'll see that there are some words still left in the sentence. Another job that we might have is an indirect object, and this placement is very, very important. When we see an indirect object, it has to come after the action verb and before the direct object. And it answers the question, to whom or to what or for what. So in my sentence, we had already determined that homework is the direct object. I handed my homework to whom? To whom did I hand my homework? I handed it to my teacher. It comes between the action verb and the direct object, and it answers the question, to whom or what. The next job is a predicate noun. Let's say I don't find an action verb. I find a linking verb. And again, we're going to spend some more time talking about what linking verbs are, but linking verbs connect. They link something back to the subject. In this case, the predicate noun is going to rename the subject. Mrs. Culleton is a linking verb, my English teacher. Teacher renames Mrs. Culleton. One of the things that you can do with a predicate noun in a sentence is switch the order. I could say, my English teacher is Mrs. Culleton, or Mrs. Culleton is my English teacher. When you have a linking verb and it has a noun after it that goes back and links, there's a big connection here between the subject and the predicate noun, then you have a predicate noun. Okay, so see that connection. And we only look for these if we see a linking verb. And then the last one we've talked about is an appositive. It follows a noun that has a comma directly after it, and it renames that noun that it follows. Probably has some descriptive words around it. Mrs. Culleton, my English teacher who has arachnophobia, freaks out if she sees a bug in our classroom. So here's Mrs. Culleton. It's got a noun after it, and I'm renaming Mrs. Culleton as a teacher. Mrs. Culleton is my teacher. Now you can see that there are adjectives describing which teacher? My English teacher. You can see there's also a dependent clause in here. But as long as there's a noun here, this entire phrase is called an appositive because teacher renames Mrs. Culleton. And so we look for these if we see a noun that has a comma directly after it. So what you're going to do in your notes handout now is follow this process to try and practice labeling just the nouns. Do your best. Again, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about these, but we're going to highlight prepositional phrases. If we see one, the noun that's at the end is going to be the object of a preposition, so I'm going to label it OP. Then I'm going to look for the subject. If I see a subject, I'm going to put an S over it. Then I'm going to look for action and linking verbs. If I find an action verb, I'm going to ask the question, whom or what? And if I can answer it, I found a direct object. If I still see some words left, I'm going to ask the question to whom and see if there's an indirect object. If I can't find an action verb and I found a linking verb, then I'm going to look for a predicate noun that goes back and renames the subject. And if I see a phrase between commas, then I'm going to look to see if there's an appositive. Okay, so this is the inside of your foldable notes. On the front, we had the jobs of nouns, and on the inside, we've got some sentences that we're going to practice. So I have Marianne exhibited the model of her spacecraft at the science fair. I am telling you that there are 4 nouns. So let's go through first and look for the nouns. Marianne is a noun. I know that's a person. Model has the in front of it, so I know that's a noun. A spacecraft, I can see a spacecraft. And fair. So I have 4 nouns in here that are going to be doing jobs. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of prepositional phrases. So I see at. At the science fair is a prepositional phrase. If I see a prepositional phrase, the noun at the end is doing this job called the object of the preposition. So I'm going to label it OP. I see another prepositional phrase of her spacecraft. So I'm going to highlight it. The noun at the end is that object of a preposition. I'm going to label it OP. Now I'm going to go look for my subject. Who or what is the sentence about? Well, it's about Marianne. So this noun is doing the job of subject. Now I'm going to look to see my verb. My verb is exhibited, and exhibited means to show something. That's definitely an action verb. You guys just did science fair. You know about that. If I find an action verb, I'm going to ask the question, whom or what? Marianne exhibited what? Marianne exhibited the model. If I can answer the question, whom or what, then I have a direct object. Okay. So there's lots of steps to this, and the most important process, I think, is systematically going through it in a way that you get your mind trained in a way that you're doing this. And if you don't, you're going to have a really hard time with it. So I'm going to do another one with you, and then you're going to try them on your own. If at any point while you're working by yourself you get stuck, you need to come ask for help. All right, it says the process took 22 hours to create the life-sized replica. Looking for 3 nouns. So I know that process is a noun. Hours, that's a thing. And replica. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of phrases. So I see a phrase here, to create. That's an infinitive. And we've talked about how our infinitives are verbs. Well, it's actually an action verb. And I know that when I find an action verb, I ask the question, whom or what? To create what? To create a replica. So this direct object goes with this infinitive phrase. Now I'm going to go look for my subject. Who or what is the sentence about? The sentence is about a process. That's my subject. What did the process do? It took. That's an action verb. So I'd ask myself, took what? Took 22 hours. So that's a direct object. Okay, so you're going to just keep going through. If you get stuck, go back up here and just follow the numbered steps. When you're done with this whole handout, you're going to go complete the exit ticket. And you're going to need this to help you. Make sure you glue this in your notebook so you don't lose it. And again, if at any point you need help, you have to come ask. Don't sit and struggle. Ask for help.